Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Gigi Pollack. With me here today are three curators from the Katonah Museum of Art, with the current exhibition being Eye to Eye. I have the catalog here. It's a portrait exhibition in three parts, but it's very interesting and very different. And here to talk about it, let me introduce the guests. First of all, we have Yvonne Pollack.
Hello.
And Ellen Keiter, who is the Director of Education. No, you're not the Director of Education, you're the Director of Exhibitions.
Correct.
I got that wrong. And Nancy Hitchcock, who is the Registrar. Yvonne, I purposely did not give you a title when I introduced you because I know through the years you have been doing so many different things with the museum. You were the Director of Education, you were the President of the Board. I'm sure there were more things. But tell us, how did you get involved with this exhibition?
Well, over the years, I've been involved in curating as well, and have, been very involved in particular exhibitions. And one of the exhibitions, particularly from an educational point of view, as the Director of Education, is one that really meant a great deal to me, was an exhibition that was about 20 years ago called Do You See What I See? And the idea was, it was a collaboration between Dartmouth and the Hood Museum. And the idea was there that different professors from different disciplines would talk about 3 or 4 works of art. It was a very small little exhibition within the Hood. And it would be a mathematician, it would be an archaeologist, it would be a psychology professor, and they each came from their different disciplines and their different ideas. And we loved that idea. We thought, of course, do you see what I see? No.
No.
We all come with our own DNA, we come with our own past, we come with our own memories, we come with our own education, so that when we look at art, it is very personal. And the more we learn about what it is about, the more interesting it becomes, but we always have the sense of our own take on what it is. There are no wrong or right answers.
Exactly.
So for me, that was very compelling. And I thought, well, you know what? We can do that again and do it from a very different point of view. So we sort of struggled with that for a period of time, and we came up with the idea of portraits, which, of course, is the most compelling to people.
Yes, absolutely. Looking at faces.
Looking at faces is
right.
what engages your brain more than anything else.
Right.
So that is really sort of the genesis of this exhibition. And then we added a lot of layers, which I must say was challenging for all of us because there were 3 of us that worked together. And, we sort of brainstormed all the time, and there were so many ideas and so many things that happened during the course of curating that exhibition. I don't think we ever had any kind of argument. We always worked it out. It was just a very collaborative, very exciting process. But we wanted very much to engage the public because we felt there's no expert in the room. There is really, it's you and how you come to that. So then we asked, we've got 63 works of art that spanned 3,000 years, from Egypt on to the most cutting-edge contemporary. And we learned a lot along the way. And then we asked people from the community. We have the poet laureate, we have artists.
Right, so the catalog has all of these comments about the different paintings and artworks, which makes the catalog so interesting to read. Because, art speak is great, but and you have a little bit of art speak in the catalog also.
Well, we asked people from all walks of life, so we did go to some professors as we had done in the past, but mostly we wanted to engage our audience. So we have...
In every walk of life.
Right. We have local teachers, local post officers.
Can I say you have me in there too?
Well,
I was just going to say that, you beat me to it.
We have artists.
Gigi's one of the writers.
Yes.
But one of the great things is the technology that you're using also, because you can go to the museum now and you have iPads there.
We have 10 iPads that visitors are welcome to sign out at the front desk, and we also have 2 stationary touch screens, one in each gallery, where people can touch an icon of the particular work that they're interested in learning more about. And this has been a huge step up from our previous exhibition, which was in 1990. Back then, we asked visitors to write their responses to the individual works on index cards and to place them in these painted cigar boxes. So we've now obviously replaced the cigar box with technology, and it's been really well received. People are loving playing on the iPads and contributing their own personal observations about the work, and it's been a very interesting dialogue both in the galleries and in cyberspace.
I want to get to some of the paintings and the artworks in the exhibition. Could you just talk about the three parts, though, because it's not just the eye to eye. You've also invited community members to
Right. So then we really want the responses of the audience.
No, but I mean the paintings, the 6x6 paintings you have there also?
We have three separate exhibitions. So Eye to Eye is our main show in our primary two galleries. And then in our project gallery, we have face-to-face community portraits. And there we asked people in the community to submit a portrait in any medium and really of any subject that they chose.
6x6.
Right.
And 6x6 was really the only...
And they're fabulous. They're terrific.
Right.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
amazing.
great.
We have over 700 submissions from individuals.
And coming in.
This
still coming
outpouring of
Wow.
creativity was truly astounding. It was much greater than we had hoped for, and we're thrilled. And people can continue to make portraits in the gallery itself, and it will be an ongoing dynamic installation. We'll add all new portraits every week, so it will
and then
the
never
audience,
be the same.
Please come in and do your own portraits. You can add to it too. It's really about community.
Yeah, and then there's a third thing.
In the project gallery is Artist to Artist, and that is 9 self-portraits by some of America's most beloved children's book illustrators. And they're wonderful and
fun.
whimsical and incredibly inventive. And Eric Carle, Jerry Pinkney, they're really fun. And it gives children a chance to see what some of their favorite authors look like or how they perceive themselves.
Which is another whole story.
Right.
Yeah. So, Yvonne, you also do docents training.
Yes.
So
there's another difference. I mean, we had so many challenges. We are asking our docents, and we hope it will continue, to have more of a conversation because it's inclusive. And when we do tours, they're themed, they're changing, so you can come back and you can hear a different version because there's no way that anyone can get around all these pieces. So it's really fun. So you have a tour.
So give us an example, like if we talk about the Pourbus painting.
Okay, so my tour, my theme has been powerful women or the muse to the feminine mystique. And when you first walk into the gallery, into the museum, there's the atrium, and then there are 2 galleries on either side. And there are walls with 2 paintings that are sort of eye to eye.
Oh, okay.
One of them is a late Renaissance painting of a very statuesque, important. As I give the tours, they say that he's sort of looking down on us, and he is self-important. And he's the Duke of Mantua, and it's by an artist named Pourbus, who was when he may not be a name that you recognize, but during that period of time, he was one of the most important portrait painters, and he painted portraits of all of the royalty all over Europe. And he made the Duke of Mantua look very impressive and very heroic. But in fact, in true life, he was not as much of a warrior, because this is a wonderful picture of him, as you can see, with armor and a ruff, very, very elegant. But
you're not wearing a ruff into battle, is that?
No, but he has his sword and he has his armor, so he really wants to be viewed as a warrior. But in fact, he was more of a lover. So then I turn and I say, and look at who he is locked eye to eye with. And the piece across the atrium is of Marilyn Monroe by an artist named Vic Muniz, who uses very unusual materials, sometimes chocolate, sometimes dirt. In this case, I ask the audience to look and see what they think it is. And as they look closer, they can see that it is diamonds. And it looks like very large diamonds. In fact, they are just diamond chips, but real.
But it's a photograph of the diamond chips.
Yes, because
and I often wondered, did he have to return the diamonds?
he had to
He
return.
did. He did. They were only on loan.
Okay, you found this out. Okay.
But the actual piece in most of his work is the photograph of what he has created.
Yes.
So then it's a multiple, and there are more than one, and it's really very intriguing to look at and to talk about.
Right, right.
So
So
that's sort of how the tour goes, and very much we try to engage the audience, and their responses, just as the responses for the writers, have really made it so much more interesting for us because we see different points of view, and it opens it up to make it just very relevant to our audience.
So more than just telling them something, you're asking them for their opinions as you're giving the tour. That's fabulous. I love that. But I think it's interesting, too, because you have a wide variety. You have this whole length of history, but just for instance, you have Marilyn Monroe by Vic Muniz, and then you have Marilyn Monroe by Hardin. Am I right? Am I getting his
Yes,
name
we
right?
have another,
Joseph
yes,
Hardin.
Which is
yes, yes,
so
yeah,
totally
which is an
different.
outsider art piece.
Outsider art piece, right, yeah.
So there are so many, what you're saying is correct, because there's so many pieces that sort of talk to each other. So it's like handshakes through history, and there's so much about the human condition. There's so much that changes, and that's clear, but there's so much that's still the same.
Right.
So a lot of the pieces, although it's through time and place, because we have, work that's global, you get the idea, and it becomes very fascinating to begin comparing and contrasting when you go around yourself and use the iPad.
Right.
And I'm sorry, I would like to just go back to the tours. Our docents have been doing a fabulous job, and this is the first time we've really asked them to do thematic tours. So each docent is choosing a theme from the show that is of particular interest to him or her. So we have the significance of setting, we have costumes and clothing tour, a tour of portraits of children, artist self-portraits, Yvonne's powerful women's tour. So you can come back again and again, and your tour will be probably, hopefully, very different, and you'll talk about completely different works. And we have public tours every day except Monday at 2:30.
Okay. I wonder when people see the guard that's standing there, the museum guard. Does anybody go? Because that's Dwayne Hansen.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, he's since passed away, but I had done that. I walked over to a guard at one of his shows, not this show, because now I know his work. But
asked him a question.
I still jump every time I
do
walk
too.
into the gallery. It's very disconcerting.
Yeah.
That piece has generated the most comments so far on the exhibition website.
Oh, no
People are astounded that
Yeah.
it is not a real live person.
Yeah.
It's really, and we placed him there purposely. We wanted, he's sort of at the corner of your eye when you enter the gallery. And at the opening night, a visitor came up to me and said she had asked him a question.
She did.
And before realizing that he was in fact a sculpture and part of our exhibition,
You know,
and
I
not
did
a
the
live
same thing
person.
many years ago.
Yeah.
But and then let's talk about the work of Herring, because that's a real life, sort of life size, but made totally different. And she uses this is a man.
Oliver
Yes,
Herring.
Oliver Herring.
That is Gloria, and it is a life-size portrait collage. He created it by taking literally tens of thousands of photographs of Gloria, the model, and slicing up the photographs and then gluing them onto a styrofoam model that he had carved of the figure. And the result is...
Well, this is something you always wanted, isn't it? You always wanted one of these?
Yes, I saw Gloria in an exhibition about 12 years ago, and she resonated with me, and I've always had her in my mind. And once we knew we were doing this exhibition, I kind of started to stalk her because I really wanted her in the show, and I had to do some real detective work to find out where she was. And I very fortunately found the private collector who now owns her and was very generous to lend her to our show. So
that was great.
Yes.
And people are fascinated
Very
by
rewarding.
her. They love walking around and just, you know, it's amazing how he has actually constructed it. It's a tour de force. It's
It
really,
is.
It
It's a
really
fabulous
is.
piece.
It really is.
So Herring is a very contemporary piece. But Nancy, what do you think about that versus the Henry piece?
Well, the Henry is from about 1926, and it is of Marcia instead of Gloria. And Marcia, we learned after we had requested this piece for the exhibition, is someone who is local to Bedford. She grew up both on Park Avenue in New York City and also at the estate Penwood, which was a 300-acre grand estate, one of the most beautiful homes in Bedford. And she was the daughter of Carl and Marcia Tucker. This painting was done when she was 11 years old, and she has, from the expression on her face, a very strong personality, you can tell. And as it turns out, her relatives remember that she was quite a terror to her mother.
Well, that's funny. So you actually talked to the relatives of,
Right.
this. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
They're still here in Bedford?
I think they still have a home here, but you know, they've
Her uncle actually wrote, or I guess, I'm not sure if it's her uncle, but one of her relatives,
Has to be nephew.
nephew Carl Tucker,
Yeah.
wrote about Aunt Marcia.
Right.
And yeah, he said that they remember her as Trouble with a capital T.
Oh, that's cute.
So,
Yeah. So that's also part of the community. It's you know, them bringing that in. And so, and one of the oldest pieces that you have in is that Moshe. Is that how you say it?
Moche.
Moche piece from is that Peru? Or? Yeah.
Yeah, that's from about between 100 and 800 AD, pre-Columbian, and the Moche was a culture that flourished in northern Peru, and they created these portrait vessels. That portrait is actually a container, and it depicts someone named Cutlip, and he has a scar above his lip, and we can tell that it was a real person because there were something like 24 different portraits made of him over the course of his life, and he must have been a very important figure. Perhaps that scar was, you know, obtained in a battle or something. And the collector says that he keeps it in his bedroom and he feels very secure with him around.
That's funny. So, and then you also have something that I think is really interesting. It's sort of an animated piece. It's a
Our Julian Opie piece.
Yeah.
Yes. Julian Opie is another artist that I pursued pretty heavily to be included in this exhibition. I love his work, and his portraits, I think, are so engaging. This piece is called This Is Monique, and you may just notice her very quickly, but if you spend a little time with her, you'll see that she's actually interacting with the viewer. She has different facial expressions. She'll blink her eyes, smile.
But she's not reacting. I mean, you don't do something to her.
No,
Okay.
no. But it does start
You
to
can't
feel.
make faces at her or anything like that.
You can do what you want, and she does seem. It almost becomes appropriate, her behavior.
Oh, yeah?
But I love Opie's work, not only for the interactive component, but it's just simultaneously stylized and general, but also very specific. And with this particular work, if you'll notice, he ingeniously only uses 8 black lines to define her face, yet you really get a sense
It's
of
so expressive.
It's so expressive, and you get a real sense of sort of her personality and who this woman is. And she is an actual woman. She's an art collector who lives in Switzerland.
Oh, interesting. You know, you bring up the facial thing. I was reading your introduction by the professor.
Dr. Eric Kandel.
Right. And he talks about just showing monkeys different lines and how they can recognize the eyes and the mouth, and their brains do a certain thing, and I guess that's what we do when we see faces. We're just like monkeys.
Right. And through his research, he's really found that the human brain spends more time recognizing faces and analyzing faces than any other object in the world. So faces are obviously very important.
That sounds logical.
Yeah,
I
to
think so,
social interaction.
Because there's more happening with the face than something else. I mean, even looking at an animal.
And babies learn to, look at their mother's face and mirror the expressions, and these are all things that we sort of understood implicitly, but with MRI and brain imaging, we can now prove that these areas of the brain are highly activated when they see a face.
So that sort of brings me to the Parks photograph, because certainly that's a very emotional piece, and you really can stay there for a very long time. That's a sad story.
It is a sad story. It's one of the most moving pieces in the exhibition for me personally. Little Richard's gaze is just so haunting, and it really stays with you. Gordon Parks, while he was working for Life magazine, spent a month with Richard's family, the Fontanelles, who lived in just absolute poverty in Harlem, and this was in 1967. He documented just their everyday struggles, and it became a 26-page spread in Life magazine that was published the following year. And it really was a seminal moment in opening up most Americans' eyes to, the urban plight in American cities. And the Fontanelles had 8 children living in this small 2-bedroom apartment filled with rats. And
the caption under this photograph of Richard was that his lips were swollen because he ate plaster because he was so hungry.
Yeah.
But
he's still alive today?
He actually died just about a year ago.
Oh, okay.
But the story actually turned out much better for him. He was the only child of that family that lived past age 30. But he brought himself out of poverty. He had a very successful middle-aged life, a long-term marriage, and several children. He worked for Columbia University, and he had a little recording studio in the basement of the building that he worked in. And really the reason for this is that Gordon Parks became somewhat of a father figure to him, and having that photograph taken was a seminal moment in his life. It really changed things for him.
And he was featured on the cover of that particular issue of Life magazine as well.
So it's so interesting because you have this whole story behind some of the things that are happening, and then you have this one. Is it a photograph by Salavon?
Yes.
And that is almost nothing.
Nothing and everything.
And everything. Yes, exactly. So that explain what that is. It's a bunch of photographs.
It's actually an amalgamation of 74 or 75 self-portraits that Rembrandt did throughout the course of his lifetime. And Jason Salavon, the artist, took high-res digital images of those self-portrait paintings and layered them on top of one another to create this final image.
Right. He comes from the world of video games and he statistical averaging, and so he applied those sorts of devices to average the Rembrandt paintings.
And we couldn't afford to have an actual Rembrandt painting in our exhibition, so this is the next best thing. And it's very, it's incredibly engaging. You really do get a sense of Rembrandt's presence there.
You do.
It's a ghostly presence, but the colors are very indicative of Rembrandt paintings and the mood. And you do, if you spend some time with it, eyes, nose, certain facial features begin to emerge and then just as quickly dissipate. So it's really...
So the magic word is you have to spend time. You have to spend time with everything.
Well, we ask our visitors to try to spend time with all of the works in this exhibition and to really consider their own personal responses and reactions to the work before reading those that were submitted by the community members, and that's why you will not see our traditional curatorial labels on the walls, and this is something new for us as well. You can access the curatorial information on the website or in our catalog. But
Well, what do you use for the curatorial, the art speak, if you don't mind me saying that, which is also in the catalog, I noticed. Yes. So.
But it's interesting, on the website for each particular artwork, the curatorial label is always the third. Our visitor labels are first, the first two. And in the catalog, the curatorial information is all in the back. We did not want to include it in with the visitor responses. It was important that we really validate other people's opinions, and we didn't want to sort of set up a feeling that there's just one way that somebody should think about this work.
Right,
So the information is there if you want it, but it's not the most important information.
We found that reading the responses from our commenters really changed the way we thought about the work,
that's
or led us
interesting.
in a direction to look at it in a way that we hadn't thought of before. So
Absolutely.
it's really valuable to us to have that extra input.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting because usually those curatorial statements are someone that has a degree and a PhD or something that studied that artist, and this is, just spontaneous response from people. You wonder how different it is because of that. It would be interesting to read everything and find out, is the curator or the director of the gallery seeing something different than the average person because they know more about it.
I think everybody sees something different, and that's what makes it so interesting. And as Nancy said, I wrote most of the curatorial labels, but I personally learned so much from reading other people's responses, and I was forced to see a work in a way I hadn't even considered. And so for me, it was an incredible experience.
But did it change your statements then, you think? Or did, am I putting you on the spot?
No,
I'm sorry.
I don't think it changed my statements. I wrote my statements after reading what other people said, so I tried to maybe fill in some more biographical or information about a particular time period that artist was working.
Because I find myself, if I see an artwork that I don't understand and then ask the artist about it to explain it, it's a whole new world for me because it's the creation of it and what's thinking behind it that makes a difference.
And another very interesting aspect is we asked many of the collectors who lent to the exhibition to write about why they purchased the work, how does it speak to them, and where does it hang in their home.
Right.
And that I find is very interesting, sort of a little voyeuristic, I guess, but what inspired them to want to live with this artwork?
I wonder what inspired the Cindy Sherman, the collector for the Cindy Sherman. I wonder if it, could you explain that? I mean, Cindy Sherman's a photographer, and
that's part of a series of society portraits, and
but it's her. I don't know if everybody knows. It's her. She dresses up in these different costumes, and she puts on a totally different face. She looks totally different.
Right.
Yes.
In this case, she looks like a society woman with a mink.
Right.
Well, if you look closely, she doesn't look also elegant.
Oh, no?
Up close. She has very garish makeup, very heavy makeup and jewels. And this is from a series from 2008. And she's looks like she could be someone familiar, yet she's definitely fictionalized. She always puts herself into her photographs and films alone in her studio. But she's adamant to say that these are not self-portraits, that these are sort of emotions personified, and that she is hoping to have the viewer recognize something in her portrait of themselves.
Interesting. But I find it interesting, we're talking about the collector. What inspires a collector to buy a portrait of another person? But in her case, I guess you wouldn't say it's another person. I mean, I do portraits sometimes, and it's happened to me that someone has bought someone else's portrait. So I know it happens. I just wonder what inspired someone to collect Cindy Sherman's picture.
Right.
I wonder if they say, look at this is my aunt.
We do know from some of the submissions that we got why people bought certain works. The Edward Curtis photograph of the Apache girl, Nalin, the collector actually bought that when he was 20 years old in college at Berkeley. And he said it just spoke to him.
Oh, yeah,
and
I
he's
can imagine.
carried it with him ever since, and it's always had a very prominent place of display in his home.
Yeah.
Another collector who bought the Howard Finster painting.
She was on a trip for the Katonah Museum of Art, actually, and she visited his studio and saw it lying on its side and asked about it. And he said, oh, that's my wife's little brother who had died in a car accident. And he said, I'll have to ask her if I can sell it to you. And she was delighted that someone wanted it. And so he had to finish it up by adding a few words of scripture and numbering it, number 3,572. All of his paintings had a number. He had a vision that he needed to paint 5,000 portraits, and he ended up painting something like 46,000
by the time he died.
I can't believe we're out of time already. This has been so interesting. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Well, thank you for having us.
We had so much fun.
I did too. Thanks. And thank you for watching.